everyone, and welcome back. It is day 19 of National Poetry Writing Month, or Camp NaNoWriMo, or April, or whatever you want to call it. And I am excited, as always, to be here with you. I am hoping that we can look at afters and response poems today. Basically, these are both poems that are in conversation with art that already exists, kind of like Eucrastic poetry. However, this is usually in response to written work. It can be a novel, it can be a documentary, it can be another poem, it can be a song. And an after is something that is inspired by the initial piece, whereas a response poem is in direct conversation with the piece. So I'm going to share an after poem that I wrote today, but first you need to know what I'm talking about. So the poem that this is after is titled Of the Parrot and Other Birds That Can Speak by Nick Lance. It is for certain known that they have died for very anger and grief that they could not learn to pronounce some hard words. This is by Pliny the Elder. When you buy the bird for your mother, you hope it will talk to her. But when weeks pass before it does anything except pluck the bars with its beak, and then one day it says infect, your mother tells you on the phone, and you drive over, find the frozen meals you bought for her last week sweating on the countertop. In fact, she says, in answer to your question, I have been eating, and it's as you point to the empty trash can, the spotless dishes, that you realize the bird is only saying, in fact, that this is the preamble to all of your mother's lies. In fact, she says, I have been paying the bills, and you believe her until you find a cache of unopened envelopes in the freezer. More things are showing up where they shouldn't. Looking out the back window one evening, you see craters in her yard. While she's still watching TV, you go out with a trowel and excavate picture frames, flatware that looks like the silver bones of some exquisite animal. You worry when you arrive one day and see the open, empty cage that you will find the bird dead, stuffed in an oven mitt or left in a drawer, but you find it sitting on her shoulder in the kitchen. In fact, she says, he learned to open the cage himself. The bird learns new words. You learn which lies you can ignore. The stroke that kills her gives no warning. Not, the doctor assures you, that anyone can predict such things. When you drive home that night with the cage belted in the passenger seat, the bird makes a sound that is not a word, but that you immediately recognize as the sound of your mother's phone ringing. And you know it's the sound of you calling her again and again and again, the sound of her not answering. And so this is my after. Cigarettes and routine. You buy the cigarettes for your mother without ever bothering to learn how to spell the name of the poison or how to smoke because we were born with weak lungs in the first place. You trade the spare change in your front pocket for a neon lighter. Maybe, just maybe, she won't lose this one. Or if she did, well, would that be so bad? You come home from work bearing gifts of tar and fire, wondering what comes next. If there will be more midnight escapades to keep your secret, and what news you'll have today. Where you'll end up this time, with who, which new questions will grapple at the back of your already sore throat, only to drift away in lonely, gray smoke. That is in my collection, Postcards from Breakfast, and that is one of my favorite afters. And we get to thank Neil Hilborn for introducing me to Nick Lance and his poetry. Now, when we're talking about response poems, a response poem is very different. A response poem is in direct conversation with your source material. So today I'm going to be sharing another poem from my book, Postcards from Breakfast, and inviting you to create your own response poem. So this poem is The Only Phone Call. Do you remember that late night we spent hours on the phone like it was our only phone call ever? I sat on my bed listening to the storm outside rage on using the poetry I'd written to calm the both of us. There was hot tea, so hot the window fogged and the phone crackled, and I swore to you they were just poems I'd written recently that needed to be heard or shared before I decided whether or not to scrap them. Well, what I didn't tell you, but I'm sure you picked up on anyway because that's how we are. And it's not like we've known each other for like ever, despite the lack of phone calls, late night or otherwise. I should have warned you that each and every one was about you. And while they were indeed recent to that night, with the storm raging and the tea too hot to brew properly, they told the emotional story of our friendship. And all the times I wondered if there could have been more, but realized that we were chaotic enough without unnecessary complications and tanglings. We were close enough without phone calls. Do you remember that night? Late night. We spent hours on the phone under the guise that I was recording test episodes for the podcast that ended up taking me 6 years to actually start hosting and airing. Well, that's a night I don't think I'll ever forget, even if the poetry from those wires has long since wafted away in the smoke and dreams of storm laced too hot tea. So, as you create your after, I encourage you to find a line in that poem that speaks to you, or I want you to answer the question. I do remember the phone call, even if it's not with me, but it reminds you of your own situation or of a story that you know or of somebody else you know and love. Respond to the questions in the poem. Or you can say, um, you can tell your own story about a stormy night. You can tell your own story about a time when tea spoke more clearly than the actual language that you share. Or pick anything in there and directly respond to it to create an after. And if my poem doesn't resonate with you, that's totally cool too. You can write a response poem to a song. You can write a response poem to a literal letter. You can write a response poem to a news article. You can write it to anything you want. I just have noticed in the comments and in other spaces that I'm in that you guys wanted to see more of my poetry in these. So I figured I would offer a poem for response. I hope you're doing well. Mr. Bubbly Winks is just as proud of you as I am, and we'll see you again tomorrow for another workshop. Happy writing and see you soon.